Welcome once again to Making Tracks, which this week comes from the first line in the world to be preserved, the delightful Talyllyn Railway in mid-Wales.
But first we travel to Paraguay, which has the distinction of being the last remaining country in the world to have its railway system 100% steam operated. We enter Paraguay through one of the great natural wonders of the world, Iguazu.
Although not so well known as Victoria or Niagara, Iguazu is undoubtedly the most spectacular system of waterfalls anywhere in the world. The mighty Iguazu River is funneled into a much narrower and fast-flowing channel by means of a vast complex of 275 separate waterfalls. The centerpiece of this magnificent site is known as the Devil's Throat, largest of the waterfalls. It's flanked on either side by a series of smaller cataracts where swallows constantly fly. Iguazu and its surrounding area, teeming with tropical wildlife, will leave a lasting memory with anyone fortunate enough to come here. Time now to look at Paraguay's railway, whose antiquated and run-down nature only serves to enhance the charm and character of this fascinating system. On the 8th of December 1992, even less than usual was happening due to a national holiday. At Encarnación Depot, 3 locos were present. Number 522 was still warm from recent use, while number 226 appeared to be out of service, although such things are not easily determined in Paraguay. Outside the shed was number 334. It's fairly unusual, being an oil-burning loco. Most engines here are wood burners. Moving to the northern end of the main line, we visit the city of Asunción. Inside the station was a fine old saddle tank, and in the shed, number 235 was to be found. Much of the equipment is of British origin, as can be seen from the turntable. Outside were 2 locos. Number 82 engaged in shunting operations, while number 102 was due to haul a special train, eventually departing from the fine old station building. Once on its way, number 102 made slow but steady progress towards Sapucaí. Lying 91 kilometers south of Asunción, Sapucaí hosts the railway's main workshops. In here, Paraguay's loco fleet is somehow kept running, using a fine array of machinery, steam-driven by a complex system of pulleys. 2 locos were under repair at the time of this visit, numbers 104 and 291. Outside, tank loco number 5 coupled to a tender, was in steam, along with several dumped and derelict locos. On now to San Salvador, junction for the Abai branch with a large depot. 2 locos were in steam here. Number 60 outside the shed, while number 59 was to replace 102 for the journey down the branch line. Once on the branch line, we were to witness an event so typical of railway operations in Paraguay, the watering of number 59 from a marvellous old river-fed pump, powered by steam from the loco. The first problem was to remove the plug from the steam inlet pipe. The next step was to clear the water inlet of accumulated debris from the river. As the removal of the plug seemed to be taking rather a long time, it was decided to start priming the pump. The plug for the priming vent was unfortunately dropped in the river, so more time elapsed while a suitable replacement was found. All the preparations having been completed, the big moment had arrived. To everyone's surprise, the exercise was a complete failure. So there was nothing else for it but to reverse back to the nearest station and abandon the train. Thus, another normal working day on Paraguay's railway came to an end. An experience not to be missed. Steam operations on the main lines in Britain are enjoying something of a revival in 1994 with a dramatic increase in fare-paying passengers. This has resulted in the running of more trains to cope with the increased demand, and in this series we'll be showing you some of the highlights.
Tor Valley, one of many Bulleid's light Pacifics to be preserved, has enjoyed 5 successful years running countless mainline specials. Not so common, however, are mainline excursions over Tor Valley's home territory, the southern region. And so the run from Waterloo to Yeovil and return on the 12th of February 1994 was one not to be missed. A stop was made at Salisbury, providing a suitable opportunity to have a closer look at Tor Valley. A 1946 Brighton engine, she was one of 110 light Pacifics built to Bulleid's revolutionary and distinctive design, which featured chain-driven valve gear and air-smooth casing, earning them the nickname Spam Cans. As a result of problems encountered with these engines, it was decided to start rebuilding them to a more conventional type. Tor Valley was the second loco to be rebuilt in 1957, resulting in the handsome design you see today. Following withdrawal in 1964, Tor Valley was dispatched to Woodham's scrapyard in Barry, where she remained until 1980. She was eventually rescued by Bert Hitchin, a former fitter at the ex-Lancashire and Yorkshire Murfield shed, who's seen on the right of the picture during the stop at Yoga. He bought the loco as a birthday present for his wife, and restoration followed at the North Yorkshire Moors Railway, the East Lancs Railway, and finally the Severn Valley Railway. Steam was raised again in 1987, and a year later it was decided to bring the loco up to mainline standards. In May 1989, after an absence of 25 years, Tor Valley ran once more on BR metals. Now that her mainline certificate is due to expire, this will be one of the last chances to see Tor Valley in action on non-preserved routes for the time being. Four days later, Tor Valley ran another special, originating from Didcot in cold and wet conditions. Here in mid-Wales, we're at a line with some notable claims to fame.
Running through 7 miles of delightful mid-Wales scenery, the Talyllyn Railway is notable for being the first line in the world to be preserved, and also for using the same 2 locos and 4 coaches which worked the line when it opened in 1866. Like many other narrow-gauge lines in Wales, the Talyllyn Railway was built primarily to serve the slate industry, which was a thriving business in the mid-19th century. Slate was in great demand to roof the rapidly growing cities and towns. The railway brought slate down from the Bryn Eglwys quarry, just south of Abergynolwyn, to Talyllyn. It was then transferred to standard gauge wagons for moving it to various parts of the country. The railway also carried passengers, but slate was the mainstay of the line until the early 20th century, when the introduction of the roofing tile heralded the gradual decline of the slate industry. The railway was consequently threatened with closure, but a local landowner, Mr. Henry Hayden Jones, committed himself to keeping the line open as long as he was alive. Such was his contribution to the railway's continued existence that one of the locos working the line was named in his memory. On Hayden Jones' death in 1950, it seemed that the railway would close soon afterwards. However, a group of enthusiasts organised a meeting to discuss the then unheard of idea of forming a society to preserve the railway. Bob was a founder member and has fond memories of the early days.
In the beginning, we were all amateurs and all very green, but some were even greener than others. I well remember one character who couldn't stand the squeal of the brakes of this engine, and so one day after the last train had gone, he decided to do his good turn, and he oiled the brake blocks down here. And, of course, therefore, that would remove the squeal. And when the engine went into the shed, where it should do, it didn't stop. They went straight through into Hugh Jones's bedroom and extended the engine shed. This is where the engine shed now ends.
And you lit up the gas torch, and I say there was a flame about this long on the end of it, and someone asked you something, and you started explaining, and you were waving this torch around with this great flame on the end, and everybody backed off to a respectful distance and hid. But you didn't set the works on fire, but, you know, it was a colourful event.
Since that time, the Talyllyn Railway has enjoyed many successful years. It's become a major tourist attraction along with other lines in the area, collectively known as the Great Little Trains of Wales. You're not from this part of the country?
No, we come from Nottingham originally, but when my husband retired 7 years ago, we decided to come and live down here. We used to come in our holidays to help on the railway, but now that we're here, we can do a bit more.
And why do you particularly like this line?
Principally because it's such a friendly line, I think. This is what impressed us in the first place. We were made very welcome. And also because it's the first preserved line in the world, and has all its original engines and coaching stock, which makes it great fun to work with.
I asked one of the more junior volunteers if she'd encourage other young people to work on the railway.
Definitely. Certainly. 'Cause it's really good fun. I mean, there's a good social life for the railway. I mean, even though there is a lot of hard work, you certainly enjoy yourself doing it. You make lots of new friends. You get lots of opportunities that you otherwise wouldn't have had.
What do you particularly like about this line?
It's just always been here. I mean, it's a natural choice, really.
Of the engines available to work the line, the original two are number 1, Talyllyn, built by Fletcher Jennings in 1864, and number 2, Dolgoch, from the same builder, constructed in 1866. Adjacent to Talyllyn Station is a museum, housing many interesting locos and other railway items. As you would expect, the scenery around this area is one of the main attractions for visitors. Some of the highlights being the Dolgoch Falls and the delightful walks around Nant Gwernol. Our final view is of the small village of Talyllyn, consisting of a few houses and 2 hotels, set beside a picturesque lake, and that brings us to another point of interest about the line. Lying some 3 miles away from the terminus, there never were any plans to extend here. So why the railway was called the Talyllyn remains a mystery. India has always been a fascinating place for working steam operations. Let's have a look at some narrow gauge action to be found here.
There are still many industrial narrow gauge systems using steam locomotives. Our first visit is to the sugar mill at Multipur, built by the British in 1924. This 2-foot gauge system had 2 locos working in the reception yard, one of which was number 4, built by John Fowler of Leeds. Also to be seen was number 5, a product of Henschel's of Germany, and built in 1926. As you'd expect, these sites are full of charm and character. Time seems to have stood still here. 2 locos were kept busy, taking the loaded wagons into the mill. Moving on to the Cawnpore sugar factory, built in 1904 again by the British. This is a meter gauge system, and there was a chance to see a fine old steam loco at work. Hague was built by Hudswell Clark, and despite her age, she still seems to be going strong. This was the last in a batch of 8 locos, and all have now been scrapped except for Hague. Frequent derailing occurs due to the bad state of the wagons and track. There's no problem, though. Just keep going. Our final port of call is to Assam and the Tipong colliery. This has a 2-foot gauge line, and an interesting tank loco was seen here, number 784, a Class B, built by Sharp Stewart in 1903. This loco comes originally from Darjeeling, where it worked until 1968. How these engines managed to keep going is something of a miracle. Number 784 soldiered on, providing a fine sight, pulling its rake of coal wagons. We'll come back to India in a later program to sample the delights of the broad gauge. Well, that's all from Making Tracks this week. Next week's program will come from Austria, where we'll begin to look at some of the many railway attractions to be found in that country.
We'll have our regular feature on mainline steam in Britain, and we'll also be visiting one of the most spectacular branch lines to be seen in South Africa. So until then, goodbye.
Goodbye.
And in fact, we'll be making tracks next at the same time tomorrow. And next on BBC Two, Gloria Hunniford and Cliff Richard and the Celtic group and Nuna will be joining Pam Rhodes for Songs of Praise.